from Kansas State University. This is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson with you, and here's today's lineup. K-State's Dan O'Brien will take a closer look at the effects of the war in Ukraine on the wheat and corn markets and why price volatility will likely be in play for some time to come. That's what he'll be discussing during an online K-State seminar later today, and you still have an opportunity, by the way, to take part in that. Then the sixth and final profile of this week's series on the new class of Kansas Master Farmers, Master Farm Homemakers, who will be formally inducted this evening. Today you'll hear about Jess and Laryce Schweiterman of Hamilton County. And awaiting to talk Kansas agricultural weather with us, K-State's Chip Redmond. All that straight ahead on this Agriculture Today. You are tuned to the K-State Radio Network and Agriculture Today. Glad to have you listening in as we'll take a look at information that will be conveyed later on today as part of that series that the Department of Agricultural Economics at Kansas State University has been putting out there all through this week on the economic impacts of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, that is, on the agricultural economy side of things now. And our guest now will be addressing what we are seeing of influence in the grain markets. Dan O'Brien, of course, is along with us each Friday to talk grain market trends, grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension. Dan, the markets broadly have been wildly reacting to what's going on, and foremost would be the wheat market for very distinct reasons. That is very much in the bullseye as far as the impacts from the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Yes, at least three world markets in agriculture on the grain side, grain and oilseeds are affected. First, the wheat market, because of the predominance of Ukraine in that corn market as well. Ukraine's the fourth largest exporter there, as well as one of the major ones in wheat. But for wheat, I think when you look at the futures first and see what they've been saying and versus what the USDA has been talking about or been projecting for the current marketing year, then to get some idea where we'd go next year. The current futures, by my estimates, are projecting about a hard red winter wheat price, season average price of about $7.78. Now, the USDA just raised their projection from $7.30 up to $7.50. So that's interesting to see. The real challenge, of course, to me is to look at where futures are at as they extend in deferred contracts and to look at that price and realizing that we have a number of bid supply chain oriented issues going on that are affecting what elevators in Kansas are doing. But assuming that we go forward with that and assuming a pretty conservative basis for the U.S. overall, you're still looking at $9.60, $9.70 up to $10 for a projection, futures-based projection for wheat for the coming year. So I think you can rightfully say that the Russia-Ukraine conflict has had a lot to do with raising concerns about shortfalls in wheat supplies around the world that could happen, not just in this marketing year, but especially into that next one. And because of that, the prices for wheat, prices for corn, and other tag-along commodities are all involved. I would say when you look at the U.S. wheat supply-demand balance sheet and see where the main impacts longer term could be, it's probably on the export side first and foremost for U.S. wheat. Likelihood of at least tighter world supplies that would drive potential buyers to come to the U.S. for our wheat supplies, even at a higher price, is certainly there. That we may not see that really more until the next marketing year. And you'll have this tension between the price rationing effect of higher wheat prices and the desire for food purchases on the part of these countries. So it'll be interesting to watch. If exports go up in the U.S., as I'm anticipating anyway, then you would see a tightening of ending stocks and just that much more price support. But it does seem like our price support in the wheat market right now is coming more from the international market side of things rather than our own exports going out the gate. So it'd be consistent with that it's the expectation of what could come in that next marketing year, starting June 1, that'll be an issue. I do wonder also, Eric, with high wheat prices and challenges getting inputs for some other of our grains, what we'll see for wheat seedings come September, October. Again, that's a whole other side of the wheat harvest away in Kansas. But I'm assuming wheat prices will still stay around, that the strength in them will stay around because exports will endure for that long and very likely to impact Kansas hard red winter wheat. And ahead of that I think the market is hoping it impacts spring wheat plantings in the U.S. and Canada as well.
That was one point to bring out here. One does wonder if spring wheat acreage might in fact escalate some. Droughty conditions in spring wheat areas may have more to do with that than anything else, though.
Right. Then you take a look at the world situation overall, and here Ukraine in the last marketing year is projected by the USDA to produce 33 million metric tons of wheat. The whole world overall produces 778. So you might think, well, that's not much of a dent, but they're a major wheat exporting country, either 20 or 24 million metric tons. And the world's total of exports is about 203 million metric tons in the current market year. So, about 10%, 10, 11, 12% of the world's exports come out of Ukraine. So again, not just in the U.S., but around the world, you probably see pressure to plant more spring wheat first, and then maybe winter wheat later on. Exports for some countries have really picked up. In particular, India and Argentina are being talked about. Australia hypothesized that they'll increase quite a bit. I'm thinking that the U.S. wheat exports in the next marketing year will also increase. And underlying all this, it just seems like that until we start to rebuild stocks again from this one-time hit, that we would maintain pretty high prices in an effort, on the one hand, to ration usage, and on the other, to attract more acres in the longer run.
Dan, if we might shift over to the feed grain side, corn specifically here, more or less run through the same observations that you put together in your presentation for later on today. What we're anticipating as far as seasonal prices and how this development may influence those.
It's interesting to see how the USDA has raised their projection for season average prices for this marketing year to $5.65, up about 25 cents in Wednesday's WASDE report. The futures for this marketing year, as we all the way through the end of August of this year, projecting about $5.89. So not that much difference. In fact, the USDA number is trending up to meet what the futures are saying, at least by my calculations. And then in that next marketing year, unlike wheat, where you've got a large differential between this marketing year and the next, not that much difference really between the old crop marketing year that we're now in and a futures-based projection for the next one at about $5.91. Still a tremendous price, right under $6, but still a little bit above what the USDA is projecting. Really, I think what the USDA came out with in their Outlook conference is going to have to be redone. And I think they realize it. I understand that they're redoing that right now, given what's happening in the world market and an effect of a number of things. I would say also that the Russia-Ukraine conflict is affecting ethanol. It's affecting the energy markets in the United States, as the United States has made a decision not to buy Russian oil. Well, that affects things. And so far, USDA also had raised ethanol production estimates for this current year in their last WASDE report. They raised their export number also by 75 million bushels up to 2.5 billion. And their reasoning was a straight one-to-one change that Ukraine won't be in the market to sell those bushels. So the United States is going to step in and be one of the countries, along with Argentina and Brazil and a few smaller ones that'll come in and pick that up. So Argentina not being there, and the risk of them not even be able to plant a crop, or if so, not a lot, comes into play. Glenn today, right afterwards, is going to be talking about the livestock market, and not a lot of direct impacts, at least on other than that coming out of what I'm talking about, other than feed users in the U.S. are going to have a lot of competition for grain, particularly if both ethanol and the export markets are running strong. So with the likelihood of strong usage, ethanol and exports in particular, perhaps feed usage, ending stocks probably be drawn down a little bit tighter. And what we anticipate having continued strong prices for the next marketing year from beginning of September, probably. You'd ask the question, how long do they last? Well, they probably last until we're assured of a large crop out there sometime in 2023 coming in and, quote, saving the day in terms of tight supply demand.
Well, we've just scratched the surface on your talking points that you'll be sharing with those who take in this online session, the final in the series, at noon today, running until roughly 1:30 this afternoon. And you would encourage producers to join in, and this will be two-way conversation, so producers can ask their questions about the current state of affairs, Dan.
Yes. There's an issue of that we want to at least briefly touch on with regard to how high prices in Kansas and elsewhere have affected the ability of local elevators to bid. And I think a lot of it has to do with supply chain issues. Those elevators' ability to bring grain in, but to sell it and move it beyond them. If that's hindered, then that's a challenge. Also, there's some financing issues that may come into play, hedge accounts, et cetera, and financing hedge accounts on the price run up that could be at play also. So you got that and just a number of other issues at play that are affecting the Kansas grain market and really affecting elevators as they try to function in a strongly inverted market, just like we're seeing for these ag commodities right now that we're dealing with in Kansas.
Anyone who'd like to take part in today's session, there's still time to do so. Of course, it's free of charge, and this is going to be the concluding part of the week-long series on the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the impact on Kansas' agricultural economy. Go to agmanager.info. You'll find the links to participating. Good information presented by Dan and by Glenn Tonzer on the livestock market side at that time. Dan, thank you. Best of luck with the presentation later on today.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
Dan O'Brien, grain market economist, K-State Research and Extension. And you're listening to Agriculture Today. Now, on Agriculture Today, the sixth and final installment of this week's series on the exemplary Kansas farm and ranch couples who've earned the distinction Kansas Master Farmer, Master Farm Homemaker. They make up the 2021 class that will be formally honored in ceremonies here in Manhattan this evening. Once more, this recognition program originated in the 1920s, paying tribute to excellence in agricultural production and leadership, environmental stewardship, and community service. K-State Research and Extension partners with Kansas Farmer Magazine to sponsor this program. Starting out as a young couple educated in animal science at Kansas State University, Jess and Laryce Schweiterman began their farming journey working for commercial livestock production outfits. Shortly thereafter, though, opportunity came knocking as a local farmer asked them if they would take on his 3,000 acres. On top of that, he recommended the Schweitermans as potential tenants to other landowners that he had farmed for. Bringing successful new approaches to crop production to the table, Jess and Laryce won over more and more landowners in the Syracuse area in far west central Kansas, so much so that Laryce quit her full-time office manager job in town to become the accountant for their rapidly expanding operation, JL Farms, which is now a 13,500-acre dry land and irrigated crop enterprise.
I had a neighboring farmer out here that had approached me several times when I was in college. He needed somebody to work for him for a few more years until he would turn the operation over to us, or to me, and then we got married in between there, I believe, right at the first year. Paul and Mary Burkhart is who that operation was, and we took on about 3,000 acres in the late 90s.
Strictly crop ground then?
Strictly dry land ground. Grew up as flood irrigation along the Arkansas River Valley. Had really shallow wells, moved a lot of irrigation pipe, converted to pivots. The water was still salty. It'll make a farmer out of you, is all a guy can say.
You did. Before we talk about how you grew the operation then, Laryce, you grew up on a farm then, presumably?
I did, south of Clay Center, Kansas, at Longford. I remember being with Mom in the truck in harvest when I was little, for as long as I can remember. My brother was in a four-wheeler accident when I was a sophomore in high school. He was going to take over the farm with Dad, and anyway, that didn't come. So anyway, it's like, Laryce, you're going to have to start learning how to drive tractors. So anyway, put me in the field one day and says, here's the disc. When you get done, come home. And that's how I learned. And anyway, so then I worked for them all during high school and college, and then went to work for a neighboring hog farm just down the road, Henry's Limited, because Dad said, you need to go out and work for somebody else so you know what it's like to work for other people besides your family.
Well, let's talk about the growth and evolution of JL Farms, and you mentioned the 3,000 acres, Jess, that you first took on, the both of you. And then from there, was the intent to continue to add as you could, or take it as it comes?
Yeah, it was just take it as you comes and whatever opportunities would present themselves. We wanted to focus or stay with the dry land operation just because we were transitioning a lot of land from like wheat fallow wheat to wheat sorghum fallow and a no-till or very reduced till operations, and we've moved to more corn over the years and made friends with a lot of the landowners and farmers up in this area, and we were doing custom work. One of our major expansions probably happened in 2004, Dykeman family, and that's a farmstead we live on. Very progressive older gentleman that didn't have any kids farming with him. So we had the opportunity to buy it turned into buying the original farmstead. That kind of came with a very good opportunity to rent the ground and work with them over the years.
Well, there's something to be said for locals who have farmed for eons reaching out to the two of you to take their legacies up. So that's got to be something of a source of pride for you, doesn't it?
Yes.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
At some point you did pick back up on irrigated cropping, did you not?
Yes, we got pretty fortunate. There was some CRP land for sale one winter, and I had some health challenges that were more substantial, and I was had called the realtor probably over amount of times. If you know what I mean, it's like, this can't be real, and why isn't somebody else interested, or what's the deal? Well, then I had some health challenges, and we decided not to go to the sale, and they called on a Monday morning looking, wonder where we were. And so then that turned into an opportunity. Her parents helped us out at that point in time, and then later on we had some other dryland ground. Our first quarter of ground we actually traded, and a couple other quarters for that with her parents to make that all work out so that we could make the increased investment of all the irrigation equipment. And in essence, we didn't have to pay any more than dryland price for it, so that worked out really well.
At what point did you commit to certified seed production and being a seed dealer?
2007.
2007, I'd say in Danby was maybe our first
Danby
variety
was the first
that we
and only,
first and only, and
white wheat, trying to get into that market.
Trying to get into the white wheat market. It had the most wheat streak resistance at that point in time. In 12, we broke out some CRP, and we had planted numerous different companies worth of corn seed, Hogemeyer, Milo, and corn seed, and then the Kansas Wheat Alliance on the wheat. And now there's a lot of very good wheat streak mosaic resistant varieties out there that really stand to take a stronghold in the area.
As far as your, quote, off-farm activities, and I think you are on the Skyline Co-op board, have been?
Yeah, have been.
And Laryce, you've been deeply involved in church activities.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes he thinks too much. That's something every day, always. But, I keep the books for the church, and the choir leader, and just overall help with whatever needs help. Yeah. And then I'm also on the county FSA board, so have been for, I think, 5 years.
You're both very engaged in the Syracuse community, Hamilton County community as well, and that manifests itself in a number of ways beyond just what we mentioned there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we have aunt and uncle that run the theater, and they're passionate about the community, and so, we're around them a lot and see what they do for the community. And then we also realize that, agriculture is what makes this community what it is, and if agriculture is successful, so is the community.
And back to the farm, conservation is a big part of what you're all about. Your conservation tilling, of course, and systems of that nature, conservation stewardship program involvement. So is that a necessity or a preference or both out here?
It's a necessity. I mean, we tried a little bit of cover crop for a year or two, and in our opinion, we don't get enough moisture to utilize. When it takes 8 inches of water just to get that first bushel of corn raised, you got to accumulate that. We're very blessed with deep soils, and so you got to fill that profile up, and then you got to be able to store that water and manage it. And we've gone to where we're running stripper heads now, and that really keeps the soil covered and cuts down our pan evaporation rates, and actually carries us through to where we can run a couple years of continuous row crop behind our wheat operation. And so we're, again, just trying to hold that income level up and averaging it out over more years in order to be able to afford the land. I mean, that's, I have people ask us, well, is farming going to go corporate? Well, or custom, or the farming operation has to be able to afford to purchase the land. Otherwise, we're just exposed to the whims of people that move in and they come and go, and it takes a lot to be rooted in deep and just grind it out. You think, well, maybe we ought to just quit and go do something else, and it's like, no, there's no point in it. I mean, what better life would you want? There's days that you can't quit. The 25th of May or the 25th of June, it don't get any busier than those few days.
Yeah, what your grandpa used to say, it's either so good you don't want to leave, or it's so bad you can't get out of town.
That's so, it's either so,
and
in this country.
That's the same day.
And that's the same day.
You have to adapt.
Yeah, you have to adapt.
Jess and Laryce Schweiterman of Hamilton County. They're part of the 2021 class of Kansas Master Farmers, Master Farm Homemakers, along with David and Sarah Combs of Osage County, Wayne and Carrie Grimm of Brown County, Larry and Virginia Kepley of Grant County, Nathan and Susie Larson of Riley County, and Phil and Rhonda Perry of Jefferson County. Agriculture Today extends a well-deserved congratulations to all. This is the K-State Radio Network. We're back now on Agriculture Today, and as we reflect on the weather in Kansas this past week, well, another snow event pushed through. We'll talk about the impact of that now with Chip Redmond, meteorologist with K-State Research and Extension. Decent to more than decent amounts of snow falling in Kansas yesterday. Chip, just what were you seeing from the reports from the mesonet stations?
Yeah, some good precipitation amounts when you add in Sunday and Thursday. They're mostly focused once again on eastern and central Kansas, and then we reached up into the much-needed area of north-central Kansas and northwest Kansas on Thursday morning. Precipitation totals varied. We had mixed precipitation, thunder, lightning, sleet. It was quite the event, but the big winners were along I-70 corridor there from basically Manhattan to Kansas City in the northern foothills with over a half-inch of moisture or near a half-inch of moisture over the weekend, with another couple of tenths of an inch of moisture midweek. Those are the big winners, and then I think I-70 and mostly northward had about 2 to 3/10 of an inch, a little bit higher there around Sharon Springs up to Norton, where they had up to a half inch with the heavier snows. They had up to 12 inches of snow here in this week's snow event. So widespread precipitation everywhere except for the Southwest. The Southwest is once again just missing out on these events.
Yeah. It still remains tough there. What happened here in this area anyway, thunder snow of last Sunday would have registered on the drought monitor for this past week. So how does that monitor read currently?
Yeah, the drought monitor cutoff is Tuesday morning, so it didn't include Wednesday night and the Thursday morning snowfall. Only improvements that we saw this week were in the far southeast, where they keep getting timely enough moisture, and there's even muddy conditions in places of Cherokee County. Elsewhere, we saw more severe drought expansion. It expanded in the northwest and north central and in the south central along the Oklahoma border. And then most notably this week, we saw growth in the first edition of D4 exceptional drought in the southwest was introduced.
Our temperatures, Chip, have been whipsawing back and forth over several days' time. It was spring-like, of course, heading into Saturday afternoon and evening, then sharply cold, and the snow systems, of course, chilling things a bit too. And we've still cold weather ahead, but then it's going to steadily warm up, it sounds.
Yeah, we're at the low end of that whiplash now, with highs in the teens to 20s to end the week. And then by the end of the weekend, I think most folks will see 60 degrees, except for where the heaviest snow fell in the northwest. And we'll have kind of a little bit of a roller coaster next week, but mostly above average temperatures for the whole state through the week. And that's going to at least stay steady for the most part for the week. So we won't see as cold as we've gotten here to end the week for a while. In fact, this might be one of the last real cold snaps we see in Kansas this spring.
I wanted to ask you if that is the case. That would be more than welcome. And expectations for the next round of moisture, what's in the outlook, if anything?
Yeah, so next week looks dry, humidity-wise, warm temperatures, breezy conditions. You know what that means. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, fire risk will likely return with some elevated fire weather next week. The real focus for moisture turns to maybe at the end of next week. Patterns are subtly hinting at perhaps another storm system very far out in advance. Any couple of small changes, and we look at another potent fire weather event too. So that's our hope right now, is that event can materialize and keep some timely moisture in the areas that we've had it and not dry out in advance to planning.
We'll look for that. Chip, as always, thanks for setting aside a few moments to visit with us. We'll talk again next Friday.
Sounds great.
That's Chip Redmond, meteorologist with K-State Research and Extension on Kansas agricultural weather. Well, our time's away once more. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy your weekend. Eric Atkinson here for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.